Welcome back. I'm Ken Hardman.
And I am Verena Hardman. In the previous video, we discussed the elephant in the room, a subject that single adults typically avoid when exploring one another as potential marriage partners. They avoid it because it makes them feel uncomfortable or confused, embarrassed or threatened. It is the need to discuss and agree upon ethical guidelines that are respected by all parties involved in the decision to marry.
The needs for accountability and safety are huge. There are no culture-wide ethical guidelines that safely guide single adults to form a healthy marriage. The common method of forming a marriage, modern dating, is a minefield of dishonesty, abuse, and broken hearts. Yet you may hear singles reply, "I'm ethical. What else is there to discuss?" Well, there's a lot to talk about.
In this video, we continue to discuss the nature of ethical guidelines when attempting to form a marriage and their benefits. We talk about the ethics that exist within a relationship of trust, marriage. It will help you think through what is ethical in the 7 scenarios presented in the next video. Considering the confusion, fear, and cynicism that drive the way single adults today form their marriages through modern-day dating, advocating for ethical guidelines is a paradigm shift. It is a conceptual shift from confusion, fear, and cynicism to moral clarity, confidence, and realistic optimism.
Like rules of the road for safe driving, the ethics to observe when evaluating someone as a potential marriage partner and forming a marriage already exist. They're not new and are recognized within the institution of marriage, even supported as a matter of law. Ethics are, for example, to act in good faith, be fully honest, make full disclosures, be loyal, and deal fairly. In other words, do not take advantage of the person who is trusting you.
If you ask someone to consider you as a potential marriage partner, is it not reasonable that you and that person would trust one another to do those things? Agreeing up front upon ethical guidelines may not sound romantic. However, it is a win-win for everyone. It is a safer and much more predictable basis to form a healthy marriage. It enables better informed decisions.
We've provided an example of ethical guidelines in Chapter 6 of our book, A Better Way to Marry. They are like a code of ethics within many professions. In our other videos and in A Better Way to Marry, we discuss how to evaluate whether a person is prepared to form and develop a healthy marriage.
We include character benchmarks and indicators of virtues practiced in a healthy marriage, like empathy, gratitude, humility, forgiveness, and essentials such as a shared life vision, basic interpersonal skills, experiences of caring for others, and more. Yes, the willingness and ability to collaborate and respect ethical guidelines go hand in hand with those virtues.
Let us review critical reasons why there is a need for a paradigm shift to observe ethical guidelines. Here are 5 of them. To begin with, look at the trends in divorces. Statistics indicate that something is very wrong with the way marriages are formed through modern-day dating. Statistics reveal that the foundations of marriages are fragile, not sustainable, and not lasting. Nearly 50% of first marriages end in divorce. Second marriages are more unstable, with a more than 60% divorce rate. And according to the Pew Research Center, divorce rates for those over 50 years old have doubled since the 1990s. Ethical guidelines enable safer, better informed decisions that form a sustainable foundation for marriage.
Secondly, those statistics are consistent with what researchers have observed in the sciences of psychology and behavioral economics. In what is called affective forecasting, they report that adults do very poorly predicting events that would bring them happiness in the future. This includes, for example, predicting whether a certain person to marry, winning the lottery, purchasing a luxury car, or moving to a different city would bring them happiness in the future.
As humans, we have great difficulty seeing through the lens of the present to imagine our future selves. Accurately predicting and envisioning the future behaviors in marriage of oneself, of the potential person to marry, and the parents and siblings of both families require moral imagination. That means knowing correctly what is moral in marriage, envisioning and having the desire and courage to do what is moral, which includes making full, honest disclosures of oneself.
Thirdly, ethical guidelines are needed to minimize forming premature emotional connections with those whom you do not really know or who are unprepared for marriage. If you are single, you may think that would not happen to you. Nevertheless, there is an important point to remember. The smooth feelings of attraction for an idealized marriage partner in themselves and the sense of their certainty cannot sustain a healthy marriage.
Premature emotional attachments break down within the ordinary and the sometimes extraordinary stresses of marriage. Sustainable, positive love relationships require a daily series of healthy decisions. Prioritizing positive feelings of attraction in the moment is an unreliable basis for choosing a lifelong marriage partner. Ethical guidelines engage your critical thinking abilities. Being able to think more clearly then leads to more prudent decisions.
Fourthly, ethical guidelines can counter popular myths about love and marriage. Consider the myth that your heart was meant to be broken and it must be broken many times before you know what true love is, or before you are prepared for marriage, and before you know who your soulmate is. Expecting that your heart must and will be broken can become a self-fulfilling prophecy, inclining singles into reckless behaviors.
A fifth reason is that not observing ethical guidelines increases exposure to dating abuse and violence, which are widespread public health problems as reported by the Centers for Disease Control. Unethical practices in modern-day dating cause more physical injuries than car accidents. Dating abuse and violence also make it more difficult to trust and cause people to be vulnerable to mental health disorders before and during marriage.
There is a term to describe the widespread acceptance of unsafe beliefs and practices in the way marriages are formed. It is what the scientists call the normalization of deviants from safe practices. The term emerged from the investigations of the two space shuttle disasters, Challenger and Columbia. It was coined by sociologist Diane Vaughan to describe the gradual acceptance of unsafe practices when people in an organization become so insensitive to an unsafe practice that it no longer feels wrong.
While there are many emotional complexities and skills in marriage that must be managed, marital ethics are simply the most basic things, the rights and duties that a husband and wife should respect and do for one another. In a healthy marriage, they are daily habits that nurture trust and confidence in one another.
If you are married daily in small ways and big ways, you trust that your partner will act in good faith and be genuinely honest. You trust that for decisions that affect you both and your family, that your spouse will make full disclosures of facts that influence your marriage and your decisions. You trust your spouse will be loyal to prioritize your marriage and your personal well-being. You trust that your spouse will be fair and not take advantage of you.
What husbands and wives are trusted to do are also called fiduciary duties, that they legally owe to one another the instant that they marry. Fiduciary sounds legalistic and not romantic, doesn't it? However, it is important to understand the purpose of fiduciary duties. Certain relationships involving very high levels of trust are regarded as centrally important for the well-being and sustainability of our society. They are protected with the highest standards of duties of care in our legal systems. The formal relationship of trust in marriage is one of them. At the same time, there are special circumstances when a statute or contract are not necessary for an informal relationship of trust to arise. They can exist between friends. For example, if you manage a friend's finances while they receive medical treatment, you have ethical and fiduciary duties to your friend. Therefore, a contract or statute is not always necessary for an informal relationship of trust to arise.
Related to this is that probably you care for people because it is simply the right thing to do, or the ethical thing to do. You are motivated because of your character, your moral internal compass, your conscience. When it is difficult to act for another person's benefit due to inconvenience or fear, you demonstrate moral courage to do it and are moved by empathy for the person you benefit. If you ask someone to consider you as a potential marriage partner, is it reasonable that person would trust you to act in good faith, to be honest, and make full disclosures of yourself? There is a moral principle that drives and shapes fiduciary duties in a relationship of trust. It is the fiduciary principle that basically means acting for the benefit of another person and not seeking an advantage over them. It is similar to the principle of altruism.
As parents, we are responsible and do our best to guide our children to become ethical adults who can unselfishly care for others beyond self-interest. We mentor them, coach them, and teach them to be ethical. Although we may not use the words fiduciary duties, as parents, we educate them to honor those duties. We do our best to motivate them to be fully trustworthy, not partially trustworthy. We teach them to act in good faith, to be loyal, and not take advantage of one another. Ideally, we partner with them in the formation of their marriages and their journey through life.
It is part of being socialized to assume their adult roles in society as a spouse and a parent, their roles in their public lives, in their careers, and as citizens. If you are a parent or a spouse or desire to become one, let us review a few basic terms connected with fiduciary duties and the relationship of trust.
A relationship of trust is about placing a high degree of trust in someone. The person who is trusted and accepts that trust is called a fiduciary. They are trusted because of their special knowledge and expertise, evidenced through certifications and licenses. Fiduciaries are trusted by someone called a beneficiary or principal to care for something that is important to them. Care involves the fiduciary duties, to act exclusively in their best interests, to act in good faith, to be fully honest, loyal, and make full disclosures, and not take advantage of them. Examples of fiduciaries in other formal relationships of trust include doctors, lawyers, certified financial planners, licensed real estate agents, clergymen and clergywomen, and trustees.
In the next video, we will present 7 scenarios that address those ethics in a relationship of trust. They are common among single adults considering one another as a marriage partner. Standing in the shoes of a single adult, you will determine whether and when you have a relationship of trust with a potential marriage partner, their parents, and your parents. You will determine whether the relationship is one of trust, who is trusted, what they are trusted to do, when, and how.
Through questions like, is that ethical? We hope to encourage single adults and their parents to think about their beliefs that premise choosing a lifelong marriage partner and forming a marriage. Addressing those questions is far better than fearing and avoiding them.
See you next time.